Hello and welcome to another afternoon idle. My name is Andrew. I'm your host, or whatever the heck I am. I'm a certified mindfulness meditation coach in the Unified Mindfulness System. You can find more about at unifiedmindfulness.com. And definitely sending energy to you, Sarah. Moving is, bar none, one of the more stressful things. So we had to pack everything up in our house, to not to move, but because we were having work done in the house and changing out flooring and stuff. And that was like one of the more least rewarding things, to pack everything up and then put it right back where it was. So for today, I'm playing around with. So I occasionally do these daily 10 meditations for the Unified Mindfulness as a coaching group, and so I'm doing one of those tomorrow. So this is a little bit of a warm up for what I'm doing tomorrow. So thank you for your patience. And it's also one of my favorite overall practices, borrowing out of So normally, my go-to practice is a variation of do nothing. We could call zazen or shikantaza in the Zen world, and but I often, depending on where I'm at with what's going on or whatever's sort of my situation at the moment, I often do this meditation. So in these afternoon idle sits, what we'll do is we'll take a technique, and that will be our representative of something for that time, and then we'll compare it with doing nothing at the end of the sit. So it's about a 15-minute sit, and we'll contrast some technique with letting go of that technique altogether. So what we'll be playing with a bit this week will be probably feel rest, or at least variations of around feel rest. So if this may not, rest may not be available to you right away, and so in this situation, what we would do then is we would maintain our focus on the body. So it's feel, as in emotional body sensations or physical sensations. So the same feel category in see, hear, feel. It's the common categories that we use in Unified Mindfulness. And then the rest part is if we have a significant reduction in activation in feel, that would be a restful state. We would consider that also a reward state. Or we have no activation. So as we sit and we're still, we kind of begin to settle, and we may, if possible, if it's available, present for you, you may settle into a situation where you start the of activation. Say you may be feeling anxious or buzzed or stressed, or however that's sort of showing up for you in the body. And then as you are able to sit and be still, you may find that you get a reduction in that activation. And that's what we would define as rest in the Unified Mindfulness System. So our focus range, again, is the physical body or the emotional body. Either one is totally valid for what we're going to do today. And we'll just stay in that feel category. So if your attention gets pulled outside, no big deal. Notice that that your attention has wandered outside, kind of a nod and an acknowledgement, and then a gracious and kind, gentle bringing back to the feel category. So where you begin a sit, as far as activation, may be significantly different from where you end. So that's always possible. The opposite is possible, where you may start a sit here and then you actually kind of managed to get a little bit anxious and worked up in a sit. So knowing that's possible, I think, is important, mainly to normalize it, because sometimes people are like, they're so into the chill part of meditation that they sort of suddenly make it like not okay if that happens. And so that does happen. It's not ideal. It's not what we're hoping for, but it does happen. So if that's the case, you can always suspend practice, get up, move around. The other option would be to focus out, to change what you're focusing on as a way to ground or anchor away from the experience. And then the other aspect is to sort of resettle in. So Shinzen Young has a very shortened, terse form in that how he starts guided meditations, which he says, stretch up and settle in. So you can always use stretch up and settle in throughout a sit as a beginning part of seeing if you're able to settle. If you're not, then those other options I mentioned. So, anchor out, focus away. So focus on sounds, or open your eyes, focus on things around you. The other aspect would be, again, like I said, to suspend is one. If you're feeling in a way resourced, you can do something that what coaches like myself in the UM system will refer to as recycling the reaction. So we have this activation in the body, and we kind of do this pivot where we begin to break down and untangle what that activation is made up of. And that activation is made up of some amount of see in, hear in, feel in, and being able to untangle that. If we feel up to it, we feel resourced. There's another way of looking at that. So we're recycling that reaction. So we change the reaction to be our focus. So that's a lot, but just I'm offering that as if folks are stressed, these are to me are the things that you have probably heard, but depending on where you're at in a given day, it's always helpful, or at least I take it as helpful to have that repetition of reminding you what is available to you. So pause for a moment if there are questions, comments, need for clarification. So our focus range is the body, both the physical and emotional body. So feel in UM terminology. And then we're bringing in rest, and that'll be the beginning part. And then we'll transition to do nothing. So at the beginning, what I'm going to offer is just a settling meditation, a guidance around just settling into the posture. So I think we're good. I'll invite the bell. And to begin, we'll just take a posture that helps us to be relaxed, one that we can be in for the next 15 or so minutes. And I usually begin by cycling through a little checklist that I've talked about, I think, a couple times. For short, I say PTC, so that's posture, tension, and then calming breaths. So your posture, you may experiment with leaning back or playing around with a posture that's a little more relaxed or laid back, seeing how that works. Ideally, we're looking to be upright, dignified, but you can always experiment and play with posture. And that T in PTC is just looking to see if there's any tension. You will probably know where you hold your tension. So for some people, it may be in the forehead or around the eyes, maybe the jaw, the neck, or the shoulders. The shoulders are real common. You can always shrug and tense up the shoulders and then let them drop. Then for our calming breaths, we're looking to use that as a physiological cue of settling in. So when we extend the exhale, that's a cue to the nervous system. And cue is, in essence, bringing the parasympathetic system online. That's the rest and digest system. So by breathing in slow through the nose, breathing in through the nose helps slow down the inhale. And breathing out slow through the nose or through pursed lips. Try to extend that exhale. And in extending that exhale, it gives us almost a downward settling motion. So slow and low is our tempo. And then pausing here just for a moment, this is kind of a waypoint. This was, for some, all they do for practice, just being in this settled sort of minimal stance. So you can always come back to this. As we begin with feel rest, let's just start out with seeing how still we can be. And accentuating the exhale, you can almost feel yourself settling a bit with each exhale. And as we settle, we may have more rest available to us. The stillness helps us to access rest in the physical body. And if we've done any physical activity this morning, maybe a walk or yoga routine, there may be sort of more rest available because of our activity. And if there's not, no big deal. Pick a sensation in the body that we want to focus on and soak our attention in. And we can label that feel if rest isn't available. As I settle into sits, depending on kind of what's alive in my experience in a given day, I likely can access rest around the belly as I breathe. So in diaphragmatic breathing, you may get a rest sensation around the belly. Maybe in the rib cage or torso. And so if that's available, we note that, soak our attention in, and label rest. Knowing our attention can be pulled away, distractions around us, thoughts, planning, fantasy, just an opportunity for us to patiently bring our attention back. No big deal. So if you're feeling a lot of activation, maybe in you may find that if you pay attention to sensations of your feet on the ground, or just the feet or the hands in general, are often neutral. And in that neutralness, compared with the activation in the body, you may be able to contact rest or not. Again, just noting what's coming up. So if there's no rest, then we can always shift to noticing body sensations. No big deal. So you often hear this analogy of what's alive in the body, the emotional body, and what's going on, maybe from a mental talk and mental imagery as kind of your inner weather. And as we get still, sometimes we can think about that storminess is subsiding and the clouds part. And when the clouds part, they reveal the mountain that was always there. So as we shift into doing nothing and allowing our attention to be free range, sometimes we may notice a stableness and a restful quality around doing nothing. So go ahead and drop the feel rest technique and transition into having the technique of no technique, do nothing. So our stance with do nothing is an open stance. and knowing that there's nothing for us to do. So we're letting whatever happens happen, and noticing if we're adding to what's happening. And again, if we are, no big deal. No need to scold. See if you can withdraw from adding and just allowing. So every time we notice that we're adding to or trying to guide or conduct or control, we let that go. Resume this stance of openness, allowing whatever happens to happen. And if your eyes have been closed, I invite you to open them and connect to your surroundings. Have any questions? I'll do my best to respond. If you have any reports you'd like to share, I'm always game to hear how a sit was for folks. I know that you can kind of have the same technique every day and you'll get slight variations. So, and then I'm intrigued right now. I don't have the appropriate background and training yet, but I'm intrigued by the breath as a remote control, I guess, is something that you hear kind of mentioned. So Sarah mentioned at the beginning that she's looking for extra energy. So just as we were accentuating the exhale in the meditation sit as a way for us to sort of bring the body down and settle into the beginning part of that technique, box breathing is one way, like a 4-4. So it's like a box of, breathe in for 4, hold for 4, breathe in for 4, hold for 4. That's a technique you'll see as like an evening out. And then there are some techniques, although I don't know enough about them, but where you can change and you're accentuating the inhale as a way to energize. My caution is that whenever you're doing that, you're breathing often from the chest, and that's going to create a stress response. So, but if you've ever seen somebody who's really mad and they're hyperventilating, that's part of that. So awesome. So the calm, Sarah's reporting that Sarah feels more calm, and then that's also a bit more energized. Yeah, I don't have ADHD, but the folks that I've known, the reports they'll offer is that there's a sort of scattered and diffused quality that is remarkably unpleasant. And in settlings, there's often a gathering, and in that gathering, then you feel less diffused, and you feel like you're resourced more for being able to do things. So that's a report I've gotten. I can't speak directly to it, but yeah. So Jill, the getting a bit sleepy. That is definitely. I've toyed with switching around the do nothing and the feel rest, just because of that sleepiness. But that's definitely something. I did a guided meditation for this recently, and pretty much everybody was like half ready to fall asleep. So, so yeah, that's definitely the danger. And I try to mention this at times. If you're in a situation when we're practicing at home like we have been this year, if you fall asleep, it may not be a big deal. I mean, it may be a big deal if you have a meeting you need to go to, or you have to go pick up people or something like that. But you're not going to fall asleep and disturb others like you would in a communal practice situation, center or a Zendo of some sorts. So I feel like, kind of allowing yourself to fall asleep, you have more latitude in the virtual environment, I think. So that's one thing to play around with. It's like if you fall asleep, no big deal. Assuming, like I said, those other things. So. Okay, cool. So Brooke, you mentioned that you were able to feel rest during the do nothing piece. And it was most accessible when you let go. Okay, that's excellent. So one of the frequent viewers of the Afternoon Idol had provided me with some feedback about that rest is really available for them in do nothing, and that the way I've been highlighting do nothing is this idea of coasting, but for them the coasting implies pedaling at some point, and I hadn't thought of that the prompt had implied kind of an activity at a later point, and for them the rest was very much available, and so they were playing around with accentuating that. So I've been mixing into my prompts a little bit around rest being available. So there's this idea that there's a quality of absolute rest, and absolute rest is sort of like always there under what's been added on to it. And that's a little bit what I was playing around with the weather clearing and showing the mountain that's always been there. That's one sort of aspect. So. Yeah, I'm always proud when I don't fall asleep too. I often meditate laying down in the evenings as a way to sit with my dog, and my dog will, when I do that, my dog will eat her dinner, and so sometimes I'm just there to try to help facilitate like a chill vibe so that she'll eat her dinner, and I fall asleep pretty regularly, like and sometimes I'm not really aware of when I fell asleep or if I fell asleep, and so I've gotten a little maybe almost a little lackadaisical with that, but it's usually it's not my only sit of the day, so I'm not as concerned about that. So yeah, Brooke, that analogy, so I pulled the clouds part and reveal the mountain that was always there is some quote I picked up recently. I can't remember where now. And I did some Googling the other day to try to figure that out. So, okay. So, thank you. We had a few extras today, and I appreciate that. And hope the moving goes well, Sarah. And yeah, so have a great week. I'm going to keep doing this into December. So I guess we can say that the November experiment was a success, and I've got everything scheduled out for Tuesday through Friday, the remainder of this week, same time, 1 p.m. Eastern. So have a great day.